Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Open Space Living Room. I'm Ryan Erickson. With me, as always, is my beloved and capable and awesome partner, Harold Chinsato. We are here for episode 4 of the Open Space Living Room. And today we have a very special guest, as we always have special guests here, Thomas Herrmann, who was involved with open space in the very early days and has done some great work with his consulting company. And we will, as we always do, go into some interesting and maybe unexpected places with our conversation. So let's welcome Thomas to the screen.
Hi there, happy to be here.
Well, happy to have you, Thomas. Well, as we usually do in this forum, we start off with a generic question of how did you discover open space?
Yes, I discovered open space back in 1998, I think. And I was at that time employed in a large national organization, employment service in Sweden. And I started to experiment a little bit with circles. I worked with building networks within the organization of 1,400 employees in the county where I live in West Sweden. And then it happened, a couple of colleagues of mine, they were away somewhere on a conference, something I didn't know about it. But when I met them, when they came back, there was kind of a light around them. They were just like super excited about something. And I asked them, what has happened to you? Where have you been? And they shared with me about this open space they experienced somewhere. I don't know where it was in Sweden. And when they shared to me about the conference, just there were things flashing around. I was just, wow, I just have to check this out. And at that time, I had a very free role in the organization. I was actually called a kind of a training agent. I worked within the training department, and I was an agent, and my task was to look in the future, what will come in the future. So I had really free hands to do whatever I really was interested in. The top director was very visionary, and he gave me the space that I could do whatever. So I just got in touch with a consultant who had facilitated that open space. Her name is Ingrid Olausson, and she was taking open space to Sweden in the mid-90s. So she was quite early also. And I got in touch with her, and she said, okay, sure, you can join an upcoming 2-day open space conference. It was actually within the organization I worked, but in a different part of Sweden, up in the mid Sweden, Sundsvall it's called. So I booked everything, and I went there, and I joined the 2-day open space conference. And of course, I was totally blown away. I remember I was on the plane back home. I was sitting with my computer in my lap and just writing. I found those notes some months ago of a coincidence, and I saw the passion I had there, all opportunities I could see. And immediately after, I hired this Ingrid to do an open space. It was with the development of the business sector in my region, and also another open space about diversity, how we can work more with diversity and inclusion. And then right after that, I organized a training for myself and 7 colleagues. So we had her train us, and of course, who stepped up when there was an open space as part of the training, who could facilitate that, of course, myself, yes. And I dived into using it a lot in the organization a couple of years until we had a quite radical shift in leadership from the very visionary leader to a more controlling bureaucratic leader. And then I just thought, I found this thing and I will not be able to develop it much more. I noticed that. So I just thought, I never had a thought about starting my own business before, but I just felt that's what I need to do. And then I was, of course, also very lucky because I had applied for a leave for 6 months to try something out, and then I had a job if I wanted to come back without payment, and that was granted. But then just 2 weeks before I was leaving, we had a downsizing coming up in the organization. So they asked if anybody wanted to leave and to get some support. I will leave. And I actually could keep my pay for 6 months. And I got also support to go to the US. We had training with Birgit Williams, and also Harrison was in Sweden at that time. So I had a training with Harrison as well. And everything I got paid from the state, which I was really lucky. So that was a really, really kickstart. Otherwise, I thought it would be really easy. I have this wonderful thing I found, and I have a good network. I thought it would take off like this, I thought. But it took a couple of years until I really got going with my consulting business. So I was really, really lucky to get that support initially. Otherwise, I don't know if would have made it otherwise, because I also have a family and I needed an income. So yeah, so someone was just opening that space for me.
When you
That's a
think
bit
back,
of the background.
when you think back to that event where you experienced open space for the first time, and since you've written notes and you've reviewed them, I wonder if you can go back into that moment and what stands out the most that just blew you away.
Yeah. What immediately comes up to me is that, of course, I put the same question to Ingrid as everybody does, or many people do. Well, what will you do if nobody comes up when you open up the space? And she said, no, that always someone is coming up. I thought, how can anyone be so cool? And for me now, it's just so natural. I know I never prepare anyone. Sometimes the leaders say, maybe we should tell some people if nobody comes up. No, just trust people will come up. That was immediately what strikes me first. And then just the breath that people experience, to be able to breathe and to follow their own rhythm, and having a 2-day open space, which was really nice to experience a 2-day open space at the first time. That also gives the space for people to really breathe. If it's a shorter open space, it's like more intense. Usually, I mean, the second day when you have like 1.5 hour sessions for the open space, and people are really, really relaxing and taking it easy. So quite often, I think people, they experience it almost like a retreat, to being on a retreat, because it's also so relaxing and so life nurturing in many ways. So.
That immediately brings to mind a question, not our official second question, but you mentioned how the space continues to open when you go from the first day to the second day. What has been the longest open space for you that you attended?
Well, the longest maybe was 1.5 years, but that's a special open space. Before I knew about open space, we talked a little bit before the meeting. I shared a bit about my travels this summer in Europe with my motorbike. In December 1984, me and my brother and 2 more friends, we went on the train in Kungsbacka, where I live, just south of Gothenburg, with a single ticket to Beijing in China, the Trans-Siberian Railway. And we just had a single ticket to Beijing, and that's it. So that was really going out into open space. I reflected about that many times after, because during that, like 1.5 years, and several times after that as well, like 4 years ago, my wife and me took 6 months off and did a similar journey, to just have no plan, to just travel and use your feet whenever you want to go somewhere else. If you want to stay, you find a nice place. That first journey I mentioned, I stayed in a village in China for 3 weeks because it was just nice. And then I moved on. So that was, I think that's my first and longest experience of open space.
Well,
otherwise, when we look at
thank you for that.
When we look at welcome. Otherwise, when we look at open space conferences, I think like the World Open Space and Open Space conferences, I've been to quite a few of them around the world. That's a 3-day conference. I think That's the longest I've been to anyway. And when I'm in my work, I quite often do 2-day open spaces at least. Maybe I don't have the courage to propose a third day. We will actually have a 3-day one in 1 month's time, which I shared a little bit about before, which starts with storytelling the first day and then a 2-day open space, which is also very nice.
So when you had this 1.5 year open space, you didn't know it was open space.
No,
but you
no,
recognized it was a similar
Yeah.
experience. I find that really interesting because I hadn't heard of open space, but I feel like my first experience of open space was going to a rainbow gathering in 1996. And the rainbow gathering started in 1971. So, and it's a lot of that's about meeting in the circle every night, especially the big meeting in the circle and on the 4th of July. And this happens in a national forest, and people just wandering around in different circles all over the forest. People just generate.
Amazing.
And it was this experience in the open space going, wow, I remember this feeling of freedom and ownership of my own experience. And amazing.
Yeah. And actually, right now, I recognize that 84, 85, that's sometime when open space was born, actually. So that coincides with my travels and my experience. So maybe it was in the air somewhere.
Well, I just want to emphasize this because it just seems really important to the community and to what Harrison Owen wrote about a lot, which is that this isn't new. Right? This is not a new thing. It's not a new experience. But we seem to forget it.
Yeah.
I think this brings us to the second question, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
What we've asked is describe for us and for the audience here, what was your best experience in open space?
Yeah, it's hard to pick the best for sure. And one general feeling I have is that every time I facilitate a meeting in circle, many times open space, other times other circles, it's like healing for myself as a facilitator. I used to be quite exhausted the first years when I worked with open space, but now I feel really energized, and I feel really that I've been nurturing myself by doing this work, which is really, really amazing to have that kind of job. I often say that the night before the open space, everything is prepared, the room is prepared, I've been walking in the circle, everything is in place, and I go to bed, and I really long to go to sleep because I want to wake up, because I so much look forward to the next morning. And that kind of work is just amazing to be able to do that work. Wow, one experience, one very special and maybe different series of open spaces. It's from 2015 and onwards, a year or two, I don't remember exactly how long, but we had many immigrants, refugees coming to Sweden from Syria, from the war. And here in Kungsbacka, where I live, I was part of a group supporting newly arrived refugees. They were living in a few houses here and there. And we had a meeting place. So every Sunday we had a couple of hours when we met together, people living in Kungsbacka since a long time, and these new people coming to us to welcome them and to just see how can we support each other and learn with and from each other. And of course, after a while, I thought, why don't we have open space here? So for quite a long time, every Sunday we had like a two hour, which is super short for me, but it was like every Sunday coming again. I was kind of facilitating an open space. Between 20 and 100 people were showing up there. And it wasn't like a real open space. I always am very clear when it's not real open space. I mean, we didn't have a circle even. we didn't have space for that really. But we were sitting at tables. We were putting paper on every table. We had a board on top, and we invited people to think about something they want to do. Some wanted to learn Swedish, some wanted to play guitars. And we had the card deck, which is a very nice card deck, which is called More Than One Story, which is about sharing stories, which has different questions, and then you share stories. And it was beautiful. That was used almost every meeting. And it was just like a continuous open space for maybe that's the longest I've had, for a year and a half or 2 years, maybe. So that was a really, really
when you did
experience.
that, how did you structure it? I'm wondering, was it just a continuous session, and then people like self-organize and to break to this topic to that topic among the tables, or
I think
did you
we
have
had I think we had 2 sessions usually, like half an hour or 40 minutes or something. And then we were in a good place because we had one big room with lots of tables, and then we had several small rooms around there. So there I could rearrange to make small circles at least. Because for me, it's really important with the circles, and maybe we come into that later on as well. That in the open space sessions, I want people to sit in one round circle, even without a flip chart standing at the end. I want just a circle, and then the notes can be organized in a different way how I organize it. So we managed to have many circles around, so that was a good part of it. Yeah. We didn't really make notes. It was more like to have a meaningful activity and to everybody to be able to choose whatever they wanted to spend the time with.
What was it like, the shuffling of the chairs in between the tables?
We didn't really need to shuffle the chairs because we had the big room where we had several longer tables where people were sitting at those tables.
I just mean all the in and out of the chairs and all the movement of people moving around. I'm just wondering how easy that was for people.
Yeah. That worked pretty good. Of course, I mean, for me, it's big part missing. I mean, in every other open space, I've been using the circle for the main group. In this case, I just didn't find it possible for several different reasons, practical reasons. So that was, of course, very different. Which
I'm kind of asking about how did they self-organize to move to different tables, and how did they see what they were going to move to? Did they move to a big board and look at a big board, or how did that work?
Yeah. In the big room, we had tables. It was like a classroom. So at the one end, we had a board, and there we usually kept some of the topics from earlier times, because this card game, for example, many people wanted to play it. So we had that at the bottom. So if anybody wanted to play the card, okay, put up the card game note. And then other notes were coming along, and like to practice Swedish was quite often as well. Playing guitar was for some weeks a hot topic, which we kept as well, so people could just choose if they wanted to take that one. And then every now and then some people wanted to get a driver's license, they wanted to practice the theory there and stuff like that. So we had the notes on the different tables, and people who could just write on a note and then walk up and put it on the board. So in that sense, it was similar.
So cool.
Yeah.
I want to try that now.
I want to go into someplace else. It's kind of in the same theme of there's best experience in open space. I wouldn't go to the worst experience in open space, because I mean, whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened. But what was the most surprising open space that you've ever been in?
One comes up immediately. Maybe I should grab that one. And that was a 2-day open space with managers of a municipality, 100 managers, which was quite early, many years ago, more than 20 years ago, I think. I was quite new then. So of course that was the interesting experience. So it was a 2-day open space, and the second day, before lunch, we had 4 sessions, I think, the first day, 2 sessions the second morning, and then action planning at the end. And the second session, the second day, was kept empty. Nobody put up any topics that time. And afterwards, I learned that they probably assumed that if nobody puts a topic up, we will finish earlier. But I didn't address that at all. It was just an open space, more open space than usually in open space. So I noticed people were making calls, they were talking to each other. It was just like an empty space without topics in that time. So that surprised me, and that stressed, of course, the top leader, which came up to me and said, "Oh, what are we going to do?" I said, "Well, it's a choice they made. We just have to accept it." And that was interesting. Yeah.
Do you remember the closing circle? Did they show up?
Yes. They showed up, and we also had action planning after lunch. So I mean, it just continued almost as planned, but there was a big break. I don't know. Everything is a break anyway, so it just was different. And of course, it was a little bit stressful for me at that moment. But I'm quite impressed by myself more than 20 years ago that I just kind of accepted. And quite often when I run into situations like that, I just don't know what to do. And then I just hear Harrison's words, just hold on to a chair and don't go up and intervene, and just see what happens and be curious.
I really
Or take a
appreciate
nap.
I really appreciate all your experience, Thomas, because that is not a situation I've ever experienced. But I've always been terrified when I see only one or two things showing up. And it just doesn't seem like anyone's going to do anything there, or everyone just wants to do one session. But the idea of people being productive and getting things done and not actually having a formal session and no one really freaking out about it, like
yeah, I mean, they were just looking at me. Is he going to do anything about this? And I didn't do anything. So then they just take the responsibility themselves. And I've been, as I say, I've been in many situations like that. I don't have a clue what to do. And more, I got more confidence. And now I'm really curious. I'm just sitting there and watching what's happening. And it always works. I mean, that's another of Harrison's words as well. Yeah. Whatever happens, it works.
Since we're doing as many superlatives as we can, I want to go where Ryan was reluctant and move to one of your most difficult experiences in open space and what you learned from that.
I mean, the one I mentioned before, I think was difficult because it really hurts if I can't use the circle. I don't know if that ever happened afterwards. And I was thinking before we met here, how many open spaces did I facilitate? And I remember several years back, I was counting a few hundred, and it's just like amazingly many. So I don't have a clue really, but it's several hundred. And the most difficult one. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard one for me, really.
I want to comment on that
because that was painful in many ways. Huh?
I want to comment on not being able to make a circle because I had that experience once at a conference that we were able to do a little during it was like a networking thing, and they let me do a little open space for that. It's very short, even shorter than 1 hour, and it was just tables everywhere. And I just tried to get everyone in the beginning to make a circle. It was so pathetic. It was just painful, so painful. You just really want them to get that experience that we're all together in this and not just the typical, you're just the follower sitting on the tables down from the podium. It's painful.
Yeah. Now I remember one open space I could share about, which was very special. It was usually the more I've been working with this, the more time I do in the preparations. I think it's so important to be in balance myself, to work with the sponsor and all the preps I do before. And this time I think I didn't have any time to prepare at all. It just happened. That was when I had a little bit, I didn't have so much work some years back, this was maybe 7 years ago or something, I would think. And then I did some stand-in teaching, which was really fun. And I came into I had an assignment there to be stand-in teacher in a music class, and I had an hour and a half, and I was told that they should practice guitar because they have to have some kind of test in guitar. And I came in, okay, I heard we're going to practice the guitar, and they just said, we haven't played any guitar, we don't know what you're talking about. And I said, oh shit, I have an hour and a half and I have 15 students and I'm supposed to teach something in music. I did play some music when I was younger, but I didn't really think that I had anything to offer them. So I said, okay, I have an idea. Let's make a circle of chairs. And I found some papers, some markers. I put them in the center, and I looked at the space. Okay, we had a drumming room. We had some space in the corridor. We had a couple more spaces here and there. And I said, okay, now we have an hour and a half, and we're going to have a closing circle the last 15 minutes. But the space is yours. You can do whatever you want, as long as it has something with music to do. So people went up. Some people chose to go drumming. Some people made a kind of some singing in the big room, and I don't remember what else happened. But they were really active. They had a great time, and there was a really spontaneous open space. It's the only time I've done something like that, just at the moment. But I didn't have any choice. I didn't have a clue what to do, and that saved me.
I think this invites an exploration into one of the topics that was brought up at Peace and High Performance this past year about that Harrison was talking about. We don't to have the 8 billion person conversation, that it's not going to be about scheduling events here and there and here and there and here and there. It's about recognizing what wants to happen and to open space where you are. And that example is that because you embody the practice of opening space, that could happen, that system of humanity and the spirit could rise and do what it was meant to do. And I think that's one of the transcendent messages of the practice of open space technology, that you're able to bring some jazz to it. You improvised in the moment, and your mastery of open space technology allowed that to happen. Very cool. Very cool.
Well, I wonder if we can go to our last question. We are doing these first rounds of the Open Space Living Room with these 3 questions. And the last one is, what do you believe or sense are the themes or conversations that would benefit our community, the open space community, the most, or just the world? To have to use this framework of open space, or bring the philosophy and practice of open space to it.
Yeah, well, what's been close to my heart for some time now, it's a little bit close to the topic I shared about before. We have an upcoming open space in 1 month's time about this democracy and folkbildning, it's called in Swedish. It's a kind of free adult education where people can choose whatever they want to learn, and they form a group and they get some support from the state for that. It's a big, long tradition in Sweden, and it's many people feel it's threatened now. So that's an upcoming conference we're doing, which is about democracy and this way of learning and growing, which is also part of the democratic development. So where I was heading, this just popped in. Where I was heading now, we in Sweden, we have quite some challenges right now. We have a lot of shootings. We have gangs in many cities in Sweden right now, which is it's a war between gangs, which have they have wars about who is the drug dealer in this town and so on. And so that's a big problem. And I think that there are so many people who don't want this to happen and who have passion to do something about it. For example, parents, people who live in the community, shop owners, sports trainers, and just, I mean, 95% of everyone living in the cities where we have these problems would like to do something about it, but I don't know how to do it. And just like we had for decades in Sweden, we had many top-down projects coming in. Now we have to find a solution. We have to make a project and stuff like that. But it's not this co-creative way of working, which open space can offer. So I see a really big opportunity to involve the people who are really passionate about making a difference, and to let them find the solutions on their own terms, and to let them also implement the solutions with support, of course, of different resources. I think that's the only way to tackle this problem. At the same time, of course, there needs to be many other things happening as well in our society. But I think to really do something here and now, I think that is a very big opportunity. And then we would need to train many people to work in a sustainable way with these methods to make a real difference. So that was what comes up to me. Maybe it's similar on the global scale. If we want changes in our local communities, invite the people who have passion about it to find the solutions and to implement the solutions. So that was what popped up in my mind on that question.
Well, I think we could spend a whole hour on this topic. This sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have comments about it, Ryan, but I have questions.
There's commentary there. If you've got a question right away, I'm sure I'll follow on to it.
This just sounds so huge, that, and the fact that you'd be thinking in this way around kind of learning groups that like is a tradition, it seems, in Sweden. That seems like that would be something I feel a great deal of passion for, because education is something that really ideally doesn't stop, and having an education-oriented populace that knows how to self-organize their own learning experience seems essential and critical for applying to this kind of governance question of how do we solve these big problems. And I mean, it's not like this gang and drug dealing isn't just an issue. I'm guessing that's related also to immigration, because that's certainly an issue here in the United States, that is often related to how things are managed at the borders, and how did drugs come in, and that it's so big. I just wonder how, have you done any open spaces on this topic before? Is this the first one?
Yeah, I mean, what I shared about now with this huge problems with the kind of gang wars. I mean, the open space I mentioned now is not directly related to that. It's more like related to this to support this way of learning, which is a tradition in Sweden since 100 years. And it's actually quite open spacey, as I said. People get together. If you find some others who want to learn something, you make a group, and then you get some study materials and some support, and some you get a room you can borrow and so on. It's really, I haven't thought about it in that way before. So thanks for opening space for that thought in me. And I've been working with several of these organizations before in different ways, but not in this. This is a open space, or the conference we're going to have in 1 month's time is for all these organizations and many different organizations in Sweden to come together to see. We feel we are threatened. We need to do something to continue to develop and not to be killed, more or less. Regarding the gang, that big problem, I haven't done anything really like that in that area yet. I think it's often quite difficult when there's a lot of fear. Also, there's often a big need for control. So it's hard to get people to listen to this. I have actually an upcoming meeting later on next week where I will meet a person who works in this area. So maybe I can, it's a person who I know. So I need to get in somewhere with someone who knows and trusts me and what I do. Otherwise, to just talk to any leader in the municipality about this, they would never dare. There is not trust enough in many places, I think.
So stepping back from the gang warfare, for our listeners, I'm wondering if you could list some of these organizations. Are any of them have resources in English?
Yeah, I was actually checking.
Useful for everyone, not just for Sweden.
Yes, I was actually checking because I wanted to find the English word for folkbildning, because it's called folkbildning in Swedish, this way of, and there is no actual translation. But I did find a link which explained it in English, which is connected to one of these organizations. So I could share that link with you, so you can share it onwards, if that's okay.
Well, I'll put it into the recording when this is made, and also into our show notes.
Cool. Yeah. I think that's quite an interesting phenomena in Sweden, which that way of learning.
I'm very eager to learn more right now.
Now, this is the second time, and even the last episode, that the topic of learning has come up, and that what all of the learning that happens in an open space. And the last topic with Ann Stadler and Anil Sachdev was about the business of business is learning those open spaces. And I wonder if that could expand, that the business of government is learning, the business of living is learning, and all of those themes is what do we learn about each other, and how do we let go of the fear. I think the word letting go came you were talking about that too. And one of the things that happens in an open space is that letting go of being completely present and totally invisible. And I think this also comes into another part of one of the previous episodes where Peggy Holman was talking about, in the circle there, she was looked to in this particular circle as an authority figure, and that as soon as she sat down, then the learning began to happen. And I think that letting go, and that what the discomfort you felt in that second day where nothing's happening, and Thomas, you're the facilitator, you need to facilitate this, and
fix it.
Fix it. Well, it's going to fix itself, and it did fix itself. And I think that's a hopeful thing, and that and it leads me to a question about what we have the thought about the overall theme. What theme would you invite, and what would your advice be to those of us in the community as practitioners to challenge us of how might we move this practice forward into different and new spaces?
Yeah, what pops into my mind is that I've been doing quite a lot of in-house trainings the last 15 years. And one example is a municipality a bit up north in Sweden, which has a difficult name for you, I think. It's called Örnsköldsvik. And that municipality, I've been coming there, I don't know how often, every second, third year or something like that, training their staff in using open space technology, and also whole person process facilitation, which is part of the genuine contact program, which I'm working with as well. So I've been teaching them these different ways of working, and now it's spreading. So more municipalities in the north of Sweden somehow they are more onto this. They have got in touch with me and also want to train their staff in this. And that means when they have a challenge in-house in their own organization or with the public, that they naturally have these ways of working. So to get co-creation to be a norm instead of something that you do once a year when you have a day over somewhat time, or when you create a new vision or something, whatever, to have it as a norm in everyday life, and also your own staff meetings and so on. I think that's a really interesting way for our community to support organizations and municipalities to build their own capacity to work in this way. And I'm so happy about that. I think it's so important work to spread this knowledge to more people. I think that practice is what is really needed in Sweden and Scandinavia now. I don't know about US if you have any. We talk a lot about trust-based leadership and management. That's the latest hype here, and especially in the public organizations. Everybody's talking about that now we have to become a trust-based organization, or we have to have trust-based leadership and management. And still, most of the meetings, they look the same. And I think if you want to build trust, you have to have a meeting format where people can express themselves and be listened to each other, and to make maybe even make decisions together in a productive way. Otherwise, if people get out of the meeting, you should say to organizations and leaders that every time you have a meeting, when people go out, they say, "Yes, let's go. Now we're ready to go." And they kind of laugh usually when I say that, because usually it's the other way around. People go out and what the hell was this? Now we have to find a way to really get things working out. So to get it into the practice of everyday life, and to make co-creation a norm, which I often speak about.
That's really lovely. I think you said you need to go soon, that you have another appointment. Am I missing? Or do you have a little more time, Thomas?
I do have time, yes.
Okay,
I have no more appointments today.
Okay, good. Well, we probably should be starting to wrap up anyway, but I thought what you spoke about just now is making this more the norm, co-creation more the norm. And there's something wonderful about, I think I've seen other things happening in Sweden and Scandinavia in general that brings a bit more of this breadth to education, to the work of education, including the prison system, like how you do reform. That there's something in the United States that wants liberty, but they also want control at the same time.
I mean, provide a provocative wherever it happens is the only place that it could have happened. And if you think about where is the place that the most control and authority is exerted upon people, is like you said, Harold, it's in the prison system. And I wonder if at some point a progressive administrator of an incarceration facility could offer the opportunity for people to understand and open space for inquiry into people who have been traumatized and who are incarcerated, and people who have been traumatized, to kind of face that. I mean, talk about a real problem with high potential for conflict, complete diversity of opinion, passion, and complexity, and a deadline of yesterday. It kind of plays into that theme. So Who knows? Maybe someone out there in open space land, a practitioner might go into one of those places and offer an opening of space.
I actually met someone. I don't know where and when. It was in an open space on open space, I think. Maybe you were there, Harold, as well. Maybe it was in Washington, where I met someone who was working in prisons with open space. Do you remember that, Harold? Or was that in Washington, or maybe
I don't.
somewhere?
I don't
So,
remember.
so it has been happening, and it is happening maybe still. And let's put that question out in the air here. Who is it? Step forward. Maybe the next
Yes.
guest. Huh? Yeah.
There's a statement I remember to emphasize this topic, which is that we're all doing time. That's a idiom in English for being in prison.
Yeah.
And I've personally experienced a lot of sense of being in prison in the corporate world and in schools, and sometimes even in personal interactions. Sometimes it's just being with myself.
Yeah. That makes me remember when I was in World Open Space and Open Space in London, 2012 or whatever it was. There was a young woman coming into the open space from nowhere. I don't know how she found her way in, because she wasn't like a expected guest. She just popped in. And she took part in some of the sessions, and then she was really angry at the end. She said, "I've been to school now for 15 years, whatever, and I never did anything like this." She thought it was so amazing. Huh? And that really inspired me. After that, I made an initiative myself to really find a different way to share about this practice somehow. So it was just beautiful to see her anger and engagement after this experience. She thought it was so wonderful. Huh? And she was so accepted in the group, and she was so much gifting us with her questions and her ideas. Huh? It was beautiful.
We have a growing homeschool movement in the United States. A lot more people, especially there was a big surge during the COVID lockdowns, where parents kind of had to do the teaching at home, but some of them did it more formally, kind of separating from the public school system. And if you ever look into that field, it's a pretty big market of people buying curricula and whatnot, but lots of alternative ways of education. And I've read about them, and none of them that I guess maybe I haven't read enough, but none of them reference the work that you talked about adults. And I'm just wondering if that movement for doing education with that kind of level of freedom for adults has gone towards the kids, where it's like it's hard for us to self-organize when we've been trained to sit and listen to teachers and wait for the bell to ring and go to another class, and then it's like, oh, suddenly we're in open space, like I get to choose my own class. I'm not used to this. I have no practice at it.
Build those muscles early. Build that ability to be comfortable with discomfort, and to wander into open space.
Does this school movement, this education movement, has it applied to kids as well?
I don't know if there's any age limit actually. So, but I think it's more like common young adults and adults. Yeah, I guess kids are so busy anyway at school. So, but yes, I think like in the teenage years, you could, for example, if you want to play some music together and have a group, then you can also use that space, the room, and you can get some support with equipment, whatever you need. So it's really cool. I was also just now remembering, I have so many memories of different open spaces, but I was at the board of a Montessori school where my kids were at the school. And actually the Montessori pedagogic, I think that's also quite a lot of open space in it. And we used to open space every semester there for the parents and the teachers, and some of the kids joined as well to see how can we improve our school, because it was a privately, it was a state financed school, but it was privately run. So it's like a cooperative. And actually, at one of the early open spaces there, one person took up the topic. Why don't we build another school for the older kids? Because we only had until the fifth grade, I think, fifth, sixth grade. And then they wanted a school from 7th to 9th grade. And then, like 3-4 years after, my son started at that very school. So I don't know if that was the reason for the school being built, but I know that 3 people who really were passionate about this met each other there, and they started a process. And so that's a cool example from the education area as well.
I have a closing to offer. So, Thomas, is there anything you wanted to say in this space that you have not yet said?
Yes, lots.
The sequel, Thomas Part 2, the sequel coming soon.
I guess we can certainly have to be back.
Yeah, there's so much more to. One thing I was thinking about a little bit, which would have been interesting as well, which is a bit more about the practice, the nitty-gritty things, which maybe it's not so inspiring to talk about. But I think there's so many small details which are so important, and just like for me, it's really important to create a space for self-organization. I quite often run big open spaces myself, and I don't work hard. I just prepare really, really well, and then everything works by the participants. And I think that's a magic thing about the open space. No? You can do it in so many different ways, and there are many, many small details. So that was maybe just one thing that I wanted to mention as well.
Thank you. That's a great point to end on. Life will be a lot easier if we allow the power of self-organization. So it's related to many hands make light work. There's many hands. They're driven by their own passion to be responsible for what they care about. Thank you, Thomas. This has been the Open Space Living Room with Ryan Erickson and myself, Harold Chinsato. And we look forward to our next visit. And I'm sure we'll have Ryan back in again. Until next time.
Well, I'm going to be here every time.
Yes.
You're talking about Thomas.
Sorry, right? Thomas. Yes, Thomas. We'll have Thomas back in again, I'm sure.
Well, of course, everybody be well, do well. Thank you for the precious gift of your time and attention, and open more space.
Open more space.